What's up, everybody? Lucas here, and I'm pretty sure you can hear me because today is ScreenFlow Live, and the whole idea is that you hear what I have to say about ScreenFlow. Today, we've done this before. Well, we've sort of done this before. We've talked about callouts. We kind of went over the properties tab about callouts, but we didn't really go deep into how to use them and different examples of when you would want to use them. And so today I'm going to show you how I've used them in the past and how I use them today, and some tricks that I've learned over time, and just kind of go deep into how to use callouts in ScreenFlow. So that's going to be our show today, callouts in ScreenFlow. See you back here in a second. That music is killer. I'm a big fan. We got this new confidence monitor. It's up here in the top right. I can see myself, hi self, and I could hear the music playing there, and I've never actually heard that music before, and I was rocking out. So today, before we get started, we got to go over just a couple things to let you guys know what we're doing here. First of all, subscribe, follow, like, share, whatever you want to do. On YouTube, you can find us. We are live streaming on YouTube right now. That's just go to Google and type in ScreenFlowTube, and we'll be up there. Facebook. Because we do the show every week, you can find us on all of those platforms. If you want to sign up for email notifications, you can do that if you navigate your way on over to www.telestream.net/ScreenFlowLive. You can fill out just a quick form, and we'll send you an email to say, hey, we're live. Don't forget to come check it out. Upcoming news announcements, live shows. Right now, not a whole bunch in the bank. We don't have a ScreenFlow webinar planned right now. Eventually, we probably will. But if you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see as a full-blown webinar, let us know. I just realized I didn't have my comments up here, so I'm going to navigate to Facebook and check it out real fast. But we do have next week's show, and next week we're going to be doing all about recording your iOS devices, which is something that people ask about a lot. It's not something I do on a regular basis in general, but it is something that people talk about. Give me just 1 second here. I need to make sure I don't type in the wrong things. Boom, ScreenFlow Tube. So I'm pulling up comments. If you guys have any questions throughout the show today, whether it be on YouTube or on Facebook, please just put that into the chat in either one of those platforms, and I'll be here. It looks like Ethan B0206 says, I got ScreenFlow 7 unlocked today. That is awesome, man. I've been using it for months. I love it. So yeah, go ahead, ask questions in there, leave your comments, whatever you want to do. We can do that. But with that, we're just going to get right into it. So callouts. First of all, callouts can be found over here in the properties tab. Like we've gone over in the past, we've got the video, the audio, video motion, screen recording, callouts, touch callouts, annotations, text, and your media library. This one, the little mouse cursor with the circle around it, that is your callout zone. All the things you ever need to do with callouts are in here. I'm going to show you just really quickly what we can do. We can add a callout action. In order to add a callout to your project, of course, you're going to need to add an action. And they have a duration. So when I add it to a clip later, you'll see that it starts and it ends at a certain time. And I can highlight different parts of my screen. By the way, you can only use a screen recording callout if you've recorded your screen for this project. If you have a previous screen recording that you exported as an MP4 and you pull it into a ScreenFlow document, you're not going to be able to do callouts because it needs that ScreenFlow recorded screen recording. We had a customer the other day talking with our support team, and she was trying to add callouts to a pre-recorded video, and it didn't work. She was confused. You just got to make sure that you have recorded your screen with that piece of media that you're trying to add the callout to. We have all sorts of customization options once you've selected what you want to choose the callout for. You can blur it, you can blur the background, you can change its opacity of the background, you can zoom, you can add borders, outlines, shadows, you can feather it. I'll show you what that means. You can add rounding to the corners. Plus we have basic animations, not so much animations, but kind of transitions in and out with our build in, build out durations. So that's just a basic overview of what a callout is. But in order to show you a basic callout, first I have to record my screen. So let me do a quick recording. Let's not show my goofy face because it's already in there. We don't need my microphone. We're just going to record desktop from Color LCD. So here we go. We're going to do a very, very quick recording. I think I'm going to let it run for maybe about 6 or 7 seconds. And that way we're just going to do some basic stuff. Not a lot going on the screen. I'll come up here, 7 seconds, stop recording, and we're going to create a new document. So here's my new document. This is my thing. All it is, if I play it through, you can see it's just my screen sitting there. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see my my timeline just a little bit better. Shift Z, for all of you who were at our hotkeys show a couple weeks ago. Shift Z, make everything in your timeline expand to fit. It's really helpful for when you want to work with all of the content in your timeline. So the first thing I'm going to do is select that layer that I have this piece of media on and come over to my callouts and add a callout action. And the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to get this little box right here. And it has a size slider. And as you can see, as I change that, it has this big old circle that changes inside. Because I can use, right now I'm on Freehand, I can use my Freehand option to make a circle looking callout. So now when I do that, I can come over here and click and drag all over. I can blur out that area now. Or I can zoom up that area. Excuse me, let's make let's start this over again. Hang on a second. I forgot I have my build-in duration. So I'm going to add a quick video action and reset the defaults and delete this. So I had my own customized callout properties, which I'll tell you in a moment. I forgot and I was a little confused why that wasn't working. So now I have just basic. I'm going to add a callout action. Keeps going back to my other ones. But we're going to take out the build out duration, drop the opacity, and drop the zoom. Right now we have nothing going on. So I have a very big circle for a callout, and I'm just going to kind of click and drag and shade in this area over here, the Properties tab. And now it's done. You can't see anything yet, though, because I have no parameters set for what this callout is going to do. Watch how it happens when I change the opacity now. So you can see that outline of the circle where I essentially colored in what I want to highlight. I can also blur that area, and now you can see it's very blurry right here. Not something you can see. I just, maybe there was sensitive information, so I blurred all of it out. Or I can blur the background. And it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look over here in the bottom left corner, right here, the numbers, you can no longer see them. And if I switch that back off, those numbers come back into focus. So in this first zone here, I can adjust this freehand animation, not animation, callout that I made. And I can, of course, change the size. We're going to delete this and create a new one. Get rid of all these things. By the way, if you want to, you can make all of your, you create your callout and you set up your settings exactly how you want, and you say make settings default for new callouts. I'm going to do that now just to the back to the original state. So when I add a new callout, there we go. I've got no specific parameters already set. So that is the freehand circle. We also have the freehand square, and that's the one that I use all of the time. Let's say I wanted to highlight this area here, the Properties tab. I would do the same thing, but this time I have a lot more control. I can come over here to the corner and click and drag down to the bottom of the Properties tab. And now, when I come over here and adjust these things, I can black out the rest of it. I can blur out my Properties tab. I can even zoom up my Properties tab. That gets a little tricky. We'll talk about that in a second. And I can, if I was going to do something, I'd probably zoom it up a little bit and make the background a little bit opaque and blur it. And that way I can really focus on this area on the right hand side. So those are my freehand callouts. We're just going to focus on that for just a second, and then we'll get back to foreground window and mouse cursor, because those are two completely separate kinds of callouts. You essentially have three different callouts going on here: mouse cursor, foreground window, and freehand. Freehand is the one that I use the most, by the way. Just double check to see if we have any comments here. None there. And Joe D. Pasquale, hey Lucas, hope all is well. You're the best. No, Joe, you're the best, buddy. All is good. I was a little sick last week, and I'm still a little bit sick with a different sickness this week, but I'm here, feeling good. So let's take this off, and let's go and try and figure out a real life situation with a screen recording here where I would use a callout. So I'm going to a freehand callout specifically. I'm going to not save this, and I'm going to record again. But this time I'm going to make believe here that, okay, now we're going to go and we're going to work on adding a text box. Click on that, and I want to add a text box, and then I'm going to show you how to do my built-in animations. And we're going to move into place, and now we can adjust these. So that was just, obviously I'm not actually talking about that today. That was just a quick demonstration of like a real life activity that I would do with a screen recording. And now when we watch this new screen recording, here we go. Let's trim off that first part. Let's start it here, like this. And then let's get rid of the last part as well, which is about there. So now we have this new screen recording that if we play in quick succession, it goes over, opens up the text, adds a text box, opens up the animation, and picks my new animation style. So what I'm going to want to do is, generally, I incorporate callouts with video actions to focus on a part of my screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a video action, Command K. Oops, I have to have my timeline highlighted. Command K, video action. And I'm going to zoom in to this area over here. So I'll make my canvas a little smaller. If you see these kind of movements, but you don't see my mouse cursor moving, I'm using the trackpad on my laptop, just moving in and out. It's like the scroll wheel on your mouse. So I'm going to make it smaller, and then I'm going to zoom. This is a good technique, by the way. Sometimes when you want to zoom into an area like here, if you have the canvas really big, you can only zoom up that much, and then you got to move over. If you zoom way out of your canvas, now I can zoom like extremely large. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoom to about there. So let's see how that video action looks if I make it a little bit longer. I'm going to want to time it up. And we're going to zoom in. We want it to end about here. So what I want to show you is which button in particular I'm clicking on, which is this text button here. So I've got my video action. Now I'm going to add a callout. So I just add a callout action. And the cool thing about callouts and video actions is that they overlap in the timeline. They can be used together at the same time. So if I take this callout and pull it over the video action, the callout will start as the video action is still reaching its end state. So if I was to do just a freehand real fast here, and zoom way up, you can see that if I start this and I just kind of go frame by frame, we have the beginnings of movement, and then right here my callout's going to start. Boom! But it's still moving the rest of the screen. Now that clearly doesn't look good, but it's just a demonstration to show you that you can overlap your callouts and your video actions. So let's actually delete this one and start over with my callouts. Excuse me. And one of the nice things is I can come over here, and I know that I haven't changed the video action, so it's going to stay here. So I can create my callout over here and then pull it over. So in this callout, what I want to do is I'm going to use a square freehand, and I'm just going to highlight this little T text box, and I'm going to zoom it up nice and big. And you can see that we're running into a bit of an issue here because the callout is being, the edge of the recorded screen is the end of parameters for my callout. It's hard for me to explain that, but it's easier to see here. If I scroll in, watch what happens when I add a zoom up on this area. You can see that right here, this line here is the edge of my canvas, and all of this area is not going to be on screen. But as I zoom up, for a second there, my T is being cut off because it's out of the canvas. So let's see if I can fix that. You know, I've never actually tried what I'm about to do right now. But what I'm going to do is on this video action, I'm going to add a crop. So if I press Control, that means it allows me to crop. Now I've cropped down the edge of my recorded video. Let's see if I can change this now. This is an experiment for me, guys, so bear with me. Let's highlight this call out, and now let's zoom it up. It seems to be doing the same thing, so that's not going to help. So let's get rid of that. Ignore, sorry, should have checked that earlier. So what that means is I have to be very wary of where these zooms are happening. So if I have this issue where as I zoom up, it kind of gets a little wonky right there, I'm going to want to maybe redo my my call out, maybe make it a little tighter, or I can just make this video action a little bit different. Let's just bring it down. It's okay to show a little bit more. So now when I come in and I add this massive zoom up, I'm never losing that T. And of course it doesn't matter if it just jumps right in, but I always like to have a build-in, build-out duration of around 0.2 seconds. You can adjust that however you want, but essentially what that does is it animates the zoom in effect. There you go. So now that I have that, I'm going to pull it over into my video action, and this is my first movement in my timeline. Zoom into this area, we're focusing in on that T. And there's another thing that you want to be careful of. It is looking at the entire screen. When you do a freehand call out, it's not going to distinguish between the layers of the windows. It's not going to distinguish between the layer of the cursor. So we have this issue where our cursor is there, and when I move it, it changes its location and its size, and it looks really jarring. You see this? And the reason why is because now where it is out of the parameters of my callout, which is zooming up, and when it changes over from that zone to the enlarged zone, it's going to jump around. So what I want to do in this case is find where it zooms out, maybe like right. Well, actually what I would probably do is just not show my mouse pointer. That's the easiest. Zoom, we're going to move into the T zone, and I'm probably going to end it about there. And then what I can do is clip that and put the mouse pointer back into this new clip. So here, as it zooms in, I got no mouse pointer showing my T. It zooms out, and there's my mouse pointer ready to go. Add another call out, video call out, and bring this back to its original size. And then zoom in on my canvas so I can see it a little bit better. So this is now what we've created. Zoom in, show that we're using a text box, and then zoom back out to show what we're about to do. And I wouldn't say that this is the prettiest ScreenFlow project that I've ever worked on, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of how all of these things work together. What I would probably do now is add another video action and zoom back in over on this place, and once I'm there, it's just so worth it. I'm not going to narrate exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going to do this real fast here so we can get in. Perfect, I like that. Now I'm going to add a call out again, and I'm working on this area. But what I'm going to do is use a freehand, wait until it moves to the big area, and then I'm going to freehand call out this whole section. But I'm not going to zoom it. I'm just going to make the rest of the screen opaque so that we can focus in on this zone. And so we're going to zoom in. I'm going to choose that. Oop, but see, it started too early, so let's make this a little shorter. I want to just start right, like at a couple frames, maybe 1 or 2 frames before I think right about there is where I want to start it. And we want to add a build-in duration of 0.2 seconds. And now we've got this. We're at the screen. We zoom into the text animation area. I choose what I want. And there you go. Everything else is darkened, and I can see only the zone that I'm working on. So those are freehand callouts. There's a couple things to keep in mind when you're making them. One, you can overlap them with other video actions, which is very helpful. Two, when you're zooming up, be aware of the parameters of the bounding parameters of the screen recording that you've done, because as you're zooming up, it will bounce and kind of move off and maybe be off the screen. So keep that in mind. And then third, your different circles and your freehand block callouts. I highly recommend using that second one, the freehand block callout. It's really easy to just go in there and find the space that you want to highlight. So that's it for freehand callouts. I'm going to double check if I have any questions about those here. All right, looks like there's something. Michael Glasser says you can also add a fake mouse pointer with an image and use the same one you use for mouse replacement, making the mouse easier to see the full time. Michael, I'm not going to show that here. That is very true, though. I've done that in the past. It's a little time consuming, but it's really helpful if you find yourself to be the kind of screen recorder who is, as they're recording, they're like, and then you want to look at this area over here, and then when you come down here, you want to look at this area over here, and your mouse is constantly moving and in the way. What you can do is just take it off, add a fake mouse pointer as an image, and add video actions to that image and move it around the screen very nice and clean. It is a lot easier just to practice being minimalist with the mouse, but if you need to, that is an option. And then back here, Larry Becker, just an observation. I was able to do a freehand callout today on a JPEG that was not a screen recording. Used zoom and blur. Ah, interesting. So I think I misspoke earlier. Actually, I know I misspoke. Freehand callouts you're going to be able to do on anything. Let's just do a quick test here. If I grab a, here's an MP4 video. Let's delete everything else. And let's see if we can add a callout to this. A freehand callout right here in this area, and I want to make it opaque. So yeah, you can do that. What you're not going to be able to do, and I'm sorry that I didn't make this clear, is any of the foreground window or mouse cursor callouts, because that needs the specific screen recording data that is built into a ScreenFlow screen recording. So thank you for pointing that out, because that was not the right information, even though I was trying to say the right information, Larry. When you're doing callouts, the freehands, the one we just went over, doesn't have to be on a screen recording. It can be on anything. And that's really helpful if you have a form that you're filling out or something that needs to have blurred out information. You can use callouts. That's how I do that. I just add a blurred callout. I just recently ordered myself a new computer, and let me show you some not so private information here. We'll pull it in. Where is it? Here we go. So for example, I was thinking about buying this MacBook here. And what I can do is, let's say that this area right here, the 12-inch MacBook, 256 gigs rose gold. I'm getting the pink one, by the way. Let's say that was something that was super sensitive information. What I can do is add a callout. Let's do freehand square and just come over that zone. And then, of course, come in and add a blur to it. And get to the point where you can no longer see what those words say. No one can see that. I like to add a little bit of a feather. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be for you to see what the feather does here. But you can see maybe right here, there's a real hard line there at the end. As I add a feather, that hard line kind of disappears a little bit. Essentially, it just blurs the edges of the callout that you've made to make it a lot more soft, I guess you could say. So that's really good. One thing that you're going to run into, though, is this. Watch that. Oh, that's right. It does this. But if I don't want to get into that. It's too tricky to even bring up. That would be its whole new thing. There's an issue with callouts when it comes to blurring out sensitive information fields on websites that you then scroll. I don't want to confuse you guys too much, but what happens is the callout is going to be imprinted in that location on the screen recording, and if you scroll the page, the callout's going to stay where you put it, and so it's not going to track with that sensitive information in the online form. So be very careful when you're doing those kind of things. In the past, I've done it frame by frame, added a new callout. I don't recommend doing that. It's a limitation of ScreenFlow, unfortunately, but there are workarounds to it. So make sure that if you are recording a sensitive information on an online document and you scroll up and down, remember that's going to be really tough in the post edit phase. So try and do as little scrolling as you can. That was a hell of a tangent. I hope I didn't confuse you guys too much. Double check my questions really fast here. Perfect. Okay. So now, thank you for pointing that out, Larry. The next part are foreground window and mouse cursor callouts. So what I'm going to do is make a couple of these. Let's open up the internet and let's make that a little bit smaller. And let's put it here. So now I have, actually, I'm going to get rid of this one. Don't save that. And let's open up a Microsoft Word. Looks good. Let's make that smaller. Here's a script that I was working on earlier, and we'll put that over here. All right, now we're going to do another quick screen recording. Blah, 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 blah. Let's move my mouse around. I'm here on this one, and now I'm on the internet window, and now I'm on the ScreenFlow window, and I'm moving my mouse around and doing crazy things. And now I've stopped my recording. So let's create a new document out of that. And this is what we made. We're going to go fast-paced. You can see I'm switching between different windows in my desktop. I'm moving my mouse around. If I wanted to highlight certain areas, yeah, I just use the freehand callout. But we're not doing that this time. We're doing mouse cursor. And what that's going to do is it's going to let me focus in on my mouse cursor. So let's zoom up. There it is. It has a little circle already, but as my mouse cursor moves around, it's going to follow that mouse cursor. I don't have to create a video action for a zoomed in circle and have it move around. It's just always going to follow that mouse cursor. And we can adjust it. This border here is going to change how big that circle is. You can see it's like completely unusable when you make it that big. But if you want it a little bit bigger and you really want to focus on that, you can. Outlining it, another way to make it look really good, or not look really good, but to focus your eye on where it is. Let's get rid of that real fast. Wow, that's a huge outline. Let's just do 0 pixels is what I'm going for. We can blur. I guess we can't. We can change the opacity, though, and that's the important part. Obviously, you don't want to go this dark because now you can't see anything, but if you drop the blur or the opacity down, you can really just keep people's eyes focused on that mouse. I personally don't use this very often because it's, to me, the importance of the kind of work that I do here is not focused on where the mouse is, but what is going on overall. So I can count on one hand how many times I've used this specific feature for the kind of work that I do. But you can change all these things that allow you to focus on the mouse cursor. If you want to get rid of the mouse cursor, that's in your screen recording properties. Just remember, show mouse pointer. And then if we want to, we can change to foreground window. And let's get rid of opacity and blur. Actually, let's add a little bit of opacity so we can see. Boom. Did you see that? So I had no specific window in focus right here, and because of that we can barely see anything. Actually, look, I did see this up here. Look at that. That's great. I had ScreenFlow in focus. So it's seeing the ScreenFlow helper icon as the foreground window. In this giant canvas, all we see when this opacity is completely up is what is in focus, the foreground window. Right now, it's the ScreenFlow icon. Eventually, though, I'm going to click on Microsoft Word. Boom. Now Microsoft Word is what we see. Now it's the internet because I'm clicking on that. Now it's ScreenFlow. I'm not sure if I made any more clicks. But what this does is it allows you to focus on the window that you're actively engaged with. So if we drop this opacity down, it makes a little bit more sense. Boom, now you can really see that Word document. Now you can really see the internet and everything else is kind of behind, and there you go, this. And if we add maybe a shadow, I think that might look really good. Add a shadow and feather it out just a little bit and make it a little bit rounded. Hopefully that will help pop these windows out from the ones that are behind them as well. Now you can see as I cycle through, it changes the focus. We can even add a bit of a background blur and a zoom. And that way, it really focuses our eyes on what we're working on. It makes it a little bit bigger, blurs out the background, and makes it darker to say, hey, audience, this is what you should be focusing on right now. So to show you what this looks like, that's all I've got for the mouse cursor in the foreground window. Those are screen recording specific callouts that are used for a very specific purpose, to highlight the mouse cursor or to highlight the window that you're working on at that moment if you have something like this where you have lots of different windows up at the same time. It allows you to, in a way, stay cluttered while being focused. I don't generally recommend having multiple windows open when you're doing a screen recording, but if that is the best way to go about it, this helps your viewers focus on what is important at that moment. But I wanted to open up a video that I recently did that had just some basic usage of callouts. The point of this video here was to show, essentially we had 4 different computer systems working at the same time, and this is kind of an early version, but we had something over here, and there's my first call out. You see that? And if we look at what it looks like in the timeline here, we've got, come on, get a little bit bigger. There we go. We've got this piece of media. It's a screen recording that I added a video action to have it come up and to crop a little bit. And then the call out on this specific area in the middle, get rid of it, and you can see the build-in, build-out duration happening there of 0.3 seconds each, a little bit of opacity and a bit of a zoom up using the freehand call out. And what I did there was 0.3 zoom in and then a 0.3 zoom out. And then I moved this off to the side. And now I had another computer come up that had a video action to come big, then to crop and zoom in. And as you can see here, the call out and the video were overlapping. So as that video action was finishing, the call out was beginning. And then I had the call out disappear. And then I just kind of gave a shift, a bit of an axis change on this video with this call out, or with this video action. You can see how it kind of tilts to the right a little bit. And then a new call out comes in to focus on another area. And then that finishes. And I bring up another piece of media from the other side, crop and zoom in on the middle there, and then add another call out to that zone. And you know, to tell you the truth, I think this, I would change this now. So the speed of the video action here is quite slow. And you have this really quick zoom in, right? So I think I would change the build-in duration, probably more like 0.6 seconds. That's going to look a little bit smoother. Watch the difference now. Maybe even a little bit longer to match the end. Oh, now I'm nitpicking, but I'm going to go to 0.7 seconds, and I think that's going to be perfect. There you go. That looks a lot better than this at 0.2, where it just kind of like jumps into your face really fast. Boom. Yeah, it was just a little bit too tight. I mean, it's not bad. It's not wrong. just kind of felt like it could have been a little bit better. So those are some real life examples and videos that I made for Telestream using callouts to focus in on a specific area of the screen to say, hey viewers, this is the part that I'm talking about in my voiceover, or this is the part that I think you should be looking at, even though there might be some activity going on somewhere else. So that's callouts, the ability to show your viewers exactly what you want them to see in a very aesthetically pleasing way. That's all I had set up for today, just to go deep into callouts, and I think we did that. If you have questions, please put them into the chat box now so I can answer them before I leave. It doesn't look like you guys have a lot of questions today, which is totally legitimate. And just a plug for next week, we will be doing recording iOS devices, which was new, I think, in ScreenFlow 5. You can record iPads, iPhones, and I think even iPods, if people even have those anymore. iPod Touches, but I'm not even sure if they make those, to tell you the truth. Those are so like 2009, bro. I'm all about the smartphone, the iOS device smartphone. All right, well, I don't see any comments coming in, so I just want to thank everyone for showing up today. Give you one more last reason to... isn't there a Wirecast webinar tomorrow or soon? Oh, I think you missed it, Larry. It was yesterday. But if you go to our resources section for Wirecast, you can find past webinars and you can get the recorded version. It probably will be up next week sometime, Larry. But yeah, you did just miss it by one day, unfortunately. Yeah, Michael, iPod Touch. Is it necessary to have reflector? Nobby Kleinman, no, absolutely not. You can learn all about it next week, but no, you absolutely do not need reflector. You need ScreenFlow. You need a USB to Lightning cable for your iDevice, iPad or iPhone, and you need just a little bit of practice. So I'll show you all about that next week. We do have a big show tomorrow, though, for Wirecast. It's not necessarily... it's not necessarily a webinar, but this guy Redfoo, if you guys know who Redfoo is, if you don't, let me show you. Is it F-O-O? Redfoo. This guy. Every day I'm shuffling. You know that guy? Videos. Well, anyways, he uses Wirecast, one of the projects that we products that we have here at Telestream, and he's coming on to our live show tomorrow to talk all about it. My internet's not working for some reason, but be sure to show up to... I think my entire internet just shut down. Screen sharing the Facebook Live. How? Wirecast, Lindsay Barlow. Not a ScreenFlow feature. We use Wirecast. It's another one of our products. All right, guys. I'm going to go. I just want to say you can find us on Twitter at ScreenFlow. YouTube is ScreenFlowTube, and on Facebook/Facebook. For those of you who want to see Facebook Live's Wirecast show tomorrow, follow us on Twitter there at Wirecast or Facebook.com/Wirecast. We have the ability to sign up for email notifications. Telestream.net/ScreenFlowLive. My internet is crashing, so I'm going to close that. Yeah, next week is iOS devices. I hope to see you guys all here, and be sure to tune in tomorrow on our Wirecast channels for a pretty cool interview with Redfoo, who is a musician and celebrity in his own right. So thanks everyone for coming, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.